Okay. So good afternoon to our viewers. Good afternoon to the potential shoppers at Shopee. This is our pre-recorded interview with our author, Ronnie Baticulon. Many of you already probably have heard of him or are aware that he has published a book with us. It's called Some Days You Can't Save Them All. There it is. And he is here with us. And when I say us, I mean myself and Professor Gerry Los Baños, Gerry, who's my deputy at the editorial department of the UP Press. By the way, my name's Neil, and I'm the director of UP Press. And this is our service to our authors and to the readers at large. We introduce our authors through these promotional videos. No? So we have given Ronnie a series of questions that he might choose to answer or not. But this is really just a conversation. And I think at least the first question we are going to give him should be a good way to break the ice. So we want to just ask Ronnie, how have you been? And are you still writing?
Okay. So hello, Neil. Hello, Gerry. Hello, everyone in Shopee. So I'm Ronnie Baticulon. So I consider myself three things. So I like to describe myself as being a pediatric neurosurgeon, a teacher, and a writer. So I've been a doctor since 2008. So it's been almost 12 years. And then, so actually, it's been 2 decades since I took the OPCAT. So I took the OPCAT in year 2000. So
ganun siya po kabata.
OPCAT in year 2000. So and then I graduated from med school in UP, and then did some residency training in neurosurgery in Philippine General Hospital. Trained further in Australia and Uganda for coming back home here.
Ronnie, I know a diplomate, a fellow. What's your?
I'm a fellow of the Academy of Filipino Neurosurgeons.
Okay.
I'm also active in the international neurosurgical community. So I'm part of the Asian Australasian Society of Pediatric Neurosurgeons and Young Neurosurgeons Forum of the World Federation of Neurosurgical Societies. So aside from that, I'm associate professor at the UP College of Medicine. So since 2017, I've been teaching in UP. And then I'm a writer. So I've been writing for as long as I can remember, since my high school days. And then I published my first book last year. So, but it was officially accepted by UP Press in 2018. So UP Press accepted, which is also the year I won the pala. So recently, have I been writing? So how have I been? So as all of you probably already know, because I work in Philippine General Hospital, so a lot of things have been very different. So a lot of the hospital has been converted to the COVID ward, COVID ICU, and this has affected a lot of the neurosurgical practice, so the neurosurgical department. We've had to scale down services. I've been writing a handful of essays. So I've published 2 commentaries, opinion pieces on how the government has been handling the COVID-19 crisis. And then that I've been doing a lot of academic work, a lot of the academic research. So I've also completed a few researches. So it's the other end of the spectrum.
We should tell the audience that the 3 of us are all teaching at the UP, and that we're all actually now panicking because we're migrating to the online platform. For this semester, we will do remote education, remote learning. So many of us are actually still not used to it. And so Ronnie's probably also, like Gerry and me, very busy transforming his syllabus and readings into digital form.
Into our course packs, as they call them.
Course packs, yeah.
The challenge is, for example,
Hate that name.
In medical schools. Because actually we completed the study among medical students, a nationwide study, a nationwide survey of medical students in the Philippines. We found out 1 out of 5 medical students would only rely on mobile data, and one out of 5 would not have a computer or a laptop.
Medical students na yung mga yan. So you think about the general UP student, no?
And then 1 out of 20 will actually only have a cell phone. But you know what's interesting? So again, as I've said, the problem is we already know there's inequity in medical education. So at the moment, most people already feel that to get into med school these days, medical school these days, to become a medical doctor, you need to have a lot of resources. So to begin with, it's already tilted, and the opportunities are already tilted, and the pandemic is actually making things worse. So really the challenge now is to not to perpetuate this inequity and to make it to level the playing field for everyone despite the differences. So yun, no?
That's interesting to hear from you, Ronnie. This very sort of blunt political statements coming from you when the book you've written is personal essays, and while there is a critique or criticism you're making about the public health system and the inequity that
There's a lot of criticism of the public health system in the book. There
yes,
is a
but
condemnation, actually.
all of it is enfleshed in stories of patients, and so you would think somehow the critique is still implicit rather than explicit. But now you're writing commentaries and you're actually making everything out there plain and clear. Do you prefer that process, that procedure of being sort of having an opinion and expressing it, or doing it through the indirect way, which is the artistic way?
In other words, is this the impact that this global health crisis has had on your writing practice, on your writing habits?
Yeah. Is our doctor writer now becoming a polemicist?
So to begin with, no. So to begin with, I think I've always believed in this. Health is always political. So health is always political. You have to understand that now. If in medicine, we are, especially in UP, we are taught that it's not just about diagnosing a disease and prescribing illness. So for example, if you the classic example, so you have a patient, you diagnosed with tuberculosis. It's not just about prescribing medications. I think inumin mo for six months, you take these medications. And then you have to understand what when this patient gets treated, but then this patient goes back to the community where he got TB in the first place.
Yeah.
So you have to understand what will make it difficult for this patient to get the drug. What if, for example, the health center that's supposed to provide the drugs free, they're corrupting the funds, so they're stealing the funds for the drugs, so the patient cannot buy the drugs. Or, for example, the patient is forced to work, in excess of what he's supposed to be doing. No? So, anong nangyayari? So he's being treated, but he's not being given enough rest.
Yeah.
So it's all those sort of things. So we always talk about the social determinants of health. So especially in our setting. So we always talk about those things. So it's not just a matter of diagnosing and giving a prescription. You have to understand what are the social, economic, political factors that can affect health.
Because
and so I think it's just...
we speak about health as though it's abstract, but we're talking about the bodies of people and their well-being. Yeah. And the bodies are situated in space and time. And if the circumstances of surrounding that space and that time are actually not conducive to well-being or to health in the first place, then you cannot really, in a way, give health to anyone.
Yes. That's exactly that. It's exactly that. Kasi hindi po pwedeng doktor ka lang na hindi pwedeng wala kang comment sa possible na corruption, hindi pwedeng wala kang comment sa failure in leadership. Because you have to understand all of these things eventually have an impact on whether your patient will get better or not. So I think when you write about health, it's impossible to be apolitical. I think it's a disservice to your patients to be apolitical these days.
Yeah, but my question is not that you whether you have a politics or not, but what form you want that politics to be expressed in. Because
it depends
on creative nonfiction, which is the genre that you write in the book, is actually the form of narrative and story and drama and character, right? But if you write commentaries, then you're basically just stating your opinion.
Well, it's always about getting the message across. So if it means you have even when I write my commentaries, I usually put the stories in there. So even when I write opinion pieces, there's always a story in there because I've realized I've been writing about patients and doctors and healthcare workers in the last 15 years or so, maybe even more, and I realized that the stories that people really remember are really the ones that they can relate to, that they can keep on namin parang ito para lang anak ko to, o para lang tatay ko yan, o para lang kapatid ko yan. And so
And full of recognizable characters, human beings that you see, you can perceive, whose experiences you can, of course, empathize with.
That's
yeah.
yeah. No, that's why. No, I'm just making Colette because I think your talent as a writer is really in your being a storyteller, and the stories carry the criticism. And if you now have to do commentaries, I would still encourage you to keep writing the creative nonfiction, the personal essay type of work rather than just the reflection or commentary one.
Actually, I think parang this is all new.
Ronnie, I am we are in the publishing business and we would like you to keep churning out books we can sell.
My wife and I have given your book to several of our friends.
Yeah.
Okay, dozens literally, and quite a few have come back to me telling me that naiyak sila, nagalit sila, sobrang sila naawa sa mga characters. Okay, and one of these days, I guess they'd like to get to know you too.
Well,
so keep churning it out.
But Ronnie, getting back to your point about public health and how entirely determined it is by economics, I am reminded of Dr. Belisario and his work on parasitology. We published his book, right? Which is medical parasitology.
Nung medical school ako, first edition pa lang.
Yes, and it is actually probably
second edition. No?
It's probably the only
book of all time.
Parasitology, and it's required by many medical schools across the country. But he told me, because after the launch, we had this merienda, and I was able to talk to him. And I asked him, what is, for you, the thrill or the fulfillment of being a doctor? And what also is the frustration? And he said, of all the different medical fields, parasitology is potentially the most fulfilling one, because parasites are identified and agents to destroy the parasites are available. But if you are in the third world and you are in the Philippines, working for the public health system in the Philippines in particular, then you realize that this person who comes to you with parasites, you can treat that person and then the parasites are destroyed and that person gets better, but then he goes back to where he's been living and he goes back to drinking dirty water. He goes back to this completely unhygienic place. And so he gets sick again. So it's almost like so frustrating if you're into medical parasitology and you're a parasitologist, you're trying to sort of help people, but you know that the cure is actually not just in the medicine. The cure is in the environment. It's in the circumstances that your patients are living in. And so it's almost like you cannot just be a doctor. You have to be a politician. You have to think of ways to help these people who are in their own communities and always more or less soaking up parasites and getting sick in the process.
There are different types of doctors.
Yeah, I know. I know, but I think for you and Dr. Belisario, you find writing and research to be complementary to your own clinical practice. And I find that maybe one of the great things about your book is that the clinical practice is there. It's clearly there. You talk about the stories, but so is the writing. So is that other aspect of your life that you are also taking care of. You said your three things. And these three things in the book actually are one. You are able to sort of live them in harmoniously. The doctor part, the teacher part, and the writer part. But of course, we are publishers, and while we are interested in everything else that you're doing, it's really the writing that we want you to keep paying attention to and not to give up on, because we want you to keep producing manuscripts. and we want to be able to make the books available to the public, because you are such a wonderful writer, Ronnie. Actually, maybe that's the next question. Can you describe your book so that our viewer, our listener, who is interested or thinking of buying it can make up his mind or her mind?
Right, so this is my first book. So some days you can save them all.
Yes, wonderful.
So this is supposed to be me, Mr. Train. So ano nagtatanong, bakit may LRT? No? So if you're not aware, so there's LRT line in front of PGH. And when I was a child, I would take the LRT from Monumento to Baclaran. So kasama ko tatay ko, we take it. And I think the train here is, I really like trains. I actually realized, so I like trains, the concept of trains, because you're it's like moving from one place to another. No, so you're always in motion, moving from one place to another. You're not you are everyone's constantly in flux. So this book is about my I divided it into three parts. No? So the first part tells my stories from when I was a high school student and a medical student. So when I was wanting to become a doctor. So and then the second part tells you about my stories from residency training when I was taking care of patients. And finally, the last part was it's mostly about stories beyond residency and commentaries on the public health system, on the Philippine healthcare system. So actually, you know what the first thing I want to tell viewers who are watching right now, you do not have to be a medical student or a doctor to be able to read the book. So when I wrote this book, even though I knew that most of the people who read my blog entries before were mostly medical students and doctors, I was really wanting to write for the general public. As I've said, the book contains short and long essays. So there are 30 there are 30 essays in all. Some short ones, some long ones, and you can read the essays one at a time, one after the other, or you can choose one in any random order.
You can read the book in one sitting. Actually, it's very light.
So, and actually, and you can still get the whole experience. So it's up to you, no? So what
I disagree. It's too heavy to read in one sitting. Masyadong mabigat.
You know what? Actually,
you need to take a break every now and then.
yung mga non-medical, yung mga non-medical people, yung mga hindi doctors. Actually, sila yung mas mabilis magbasa. Sa akin sila yung mga mas mabilis magbasa. Because yung mga doktor, yung mga nurses, yung mga estudyante, sila daw yung mas nahihirapan kasi parang may mga naaalala silang mga pasyente, may mga naaalala silang experience, and it just goes with that. This is really just trying to put into writing something that's actually a very communal experience. And as I've said, that the nice thing about it is that there's so many more people from the medical community have been writing words into paper, and it's nice. So it's nandun tayo sa time na medical humanities has taken flight, and it's also on, and a lot more people are writing, and it's good. So what will you get from reading the book? So what do you get from reading the book? So I said again, depende siguro kung ano what you are at the moment. So admittedly, the book was written to inspire. So I wanted someone, for example, a high school student or college student wanting to become a doctor, to pick up the book and get some inspiration. This is something na ito pala yung pwede kong makaharap when I'm going to medical school. Specifically, I really wanted people who may not necessarily have the resources to go into medicine. So, yung mga nangangarap na parang gusto ko yatang mag-doktor pero parang hindi namin kaya. Or parang hindi.
Teka, sa hirap ng mga naranasan mo dyan sa mga story na yan, gusto pa ba nila maging doktor, tingin mo?
Actually, no. So, yeah, no? So, again, it's up to them, no? So, it's up to them. When they read the stories, it's really up to them. But as I said, yun talaga yung isa kong target audience.
Because
they're really part of the
in UP. Somehow your book is actually, while it has a critique leveled at the public health system, UP is, of course, a government university. It's a public university. And UP is what gave you your education. It actually gave you all the help you needed to reach the dream that you had when you were a child. So actually, it's also in a way a tribute to UP in an indirect way. UP, of course, has many problems, and being public, it suffers from all the problems that government in general suffers from. But you're able to, I think, in the end, render a kind of tribute still to your alma mater for helping you realize your dream and for actually having that vision of serving the community and serving the nation.
Actually, I owe a lot to UP, and it's just fitting that this book is published by UP Press. So I think
okay, we have to clarify. You don't get automatic permission to be published in UP just because you're a UP author.
You're very happy to get that UP published.
You have to be evaluated and you pass the evaluation process to be published.
I'm very happy to have UP Oblation Writer because sabi ko malaking utang na loob ko sa UP Sa UP na ako lumaki. So I've been in UP since I spent half of my life already, more than half of my life in UP. As a medical student, as a doctor, now as a consultant and associate professor in UP. So
you're so young and now you're already an associate professor, Ronnie.
Wow. Yun nga, and then going back to your question, the other type of reader I was writing this for is somebody who wanted to know more about the healthcare system. So if you're, for example, if you're wondering why are these things happening now, so why do we have these concerns at the moment now that we're facing the COVID-19 pandemic? The book actually is will give you a good introduction on why we have the problems we have now. So the inequities in the healthcare system, as I've said, they're not explicitly discussed. No? They're not explicitly discussed in the stories, but with the stories, you realize why these things are happening. And the more important thing there is you realize that we can do so much more for our patients. So it's not just about seeing the problem, it's realizing that something can actually be done for the problem. If only people have the will and to do something about it. I think the main problem now is there's a lot of lack of awareness. There's still a lack of awareness, especially if they're not directly affected, by policies or
it's not just lack of awareness. I think it's apathy.
Actually, at worst, it's apathy, no? Or othering. It's what we call othering. So yun yung sinasabi namin ng othering. So the term othering is meaning just because it's happening to somebody else.
It's lack of empathy, which of course is what writers are writing against. When you write, you actually are championing empathy. Because to be able to write, you have to be able to imagine how life is for other people. And your writing is always an invitation to reincarnate, to more or less become someone else. And to try to understand things from someone else's perspective. When you tell the stories of those poor patients, Ronnie, you're actually, in a way, asking the reader to imagine how it is to be like them. And that empathy is the beginning of course, probably political action. You cannot really have any political action if you don't have any empathy. So the problem, I think, is apathy or indifference, and probably also a sense of hopelessness and paralysis, because we see that the problem of corruption and inefficiency in government is so systemic that people are probably just saying there's no way to change the system. The system is what it is and how it is. And so I think writers are doing the best that they can, but in the end, I think we do need to join forces with other sectors of society if we want to really bring about change, not just within artists or in the artistic community. We have to reach out to policymakers, we have to reach out to influencers, to opinion makers.
Which is the reason why really we really need good communicators. Yeah. So what we need now are good communicators at all levels. So which is more reason for people, for example, people like me in the medical community. This is not the time to stay silent. So for example, if you feel that something is wrong with what's being said in the press release, or if you feel that something is not backed by science, and we feel that it's actually going to have more negative impact on the community, then you have to say something. Now, how do you say it? Again, it depends on the role that you have in the entire picture. No? So you can say it in a story, you can say it in an essay, you can say it in an opinion piece. The important thing is you try to communicate the message.
Let's get back to the book itself and the portions inside the book. There's a school of thought when it comes to CNF, creative nonfiction, particularly the essay, that the personal essay is an old writer's genre. The reason they say that is because there is this perception that you need to put a considerable amount of distance between yourself and events which have affected you emotionally. Did you feel this affecting you? And I guess this leads to the question of what parts of your book did you find hard to write, challenging, because maybe they still impacted you so strongly that you had a difficult time creating any distance between yourself and the event.
So again, so we go back to how I wrote the book. No? So some people might think that I sat down for 6 months to write the book. That's not actually how it happened.
You were a blogger. You were writing on the run. You were blogging your thoughts right away.
So you have to again. So paano ba nagsimula yung libro? So again, this is one of the things people usually ask me. So how did you write your book? So I started. So sabi ko nga simula high school pa lang ako. Sumasali na talaga ako sa mga writing competitions. In high school, I would join the national school. I would join the regional and national schools press conference. So at one point, I won 5th place. Yes, a national form, but that was for news writing. But then I knew I've always wanted to do feature writing and all those things. In college, I discovered payups.com, which is the online community of the UP University of the Philippines. So it's being revived now, but payups.com, that's where I started to write for public consumption. So I was given a column, and then I wrote every other Monday. And I was just blogging. That was the time. I went through all phases of internet writing on the internet. So I had a blog. I tried Blogger, Blog Drive, Blog City, lahat yun. And then I discovered WordPress, and then I put up my own site. So this is I've been writing about my experiences as a medical student. And then when I was a resident, my first year was very busy. I couldn't write. But during my second year, I had a bit of more time to reflect on my patients and the work that I was doing. So intermittently, in between, so while doing errands, I would try to scribble notes, on pieces of paper, and then keep them or save them in my phone. And then when I finally get some rest day, I try to blog them. I would blog. So I would put them on my personal blog. So and then I got busy again. So I had to work. I work abroad. I didn't have time to write again. And then when I got back, I got back from Australia. I had so much available time because I didn't have work yet. I couldn't practice yet. So I said, why don't I write longer essays? So with the manuscript that I first submitted to UP Press, it was really just because another writer had been bugging me to submit a manuscript. So kaibigan ko siya from payups.com. So hello na rin. So kaibigan ko siya from payups.com. Malaki na kulit na niya na ako. Why don't you compile your essays? Of course, what she didn't know was that I've already done that. I already submitted to two publication houses before, and the manuscript had been rejected twice. And then the only reason I wasn't submitting to UP was because I didn't feel that my writing was up to UP standards. And then finally, sige, subukan ko na nga. So I submitted. So, and then what I learned, no? So what I learned is that these works, no, the things I've written, no? So this isn't actually something I wrote acutely yet. This is not something written over a short period of time. These are stories that go all the way back to 2002, 2003. So, and if you think about that time period, Gerry, that's how long ago? That's 17 years before the book came out. So I think that's long enough time to reflect. I think that's long enough time to reflect. Although the last essay I've written here was written in 2018. Yeah, so because of the process in revising, editing, and all that, I think I've done enough introspection for these stories. Now, again, I suppose I'd like to highlight one difference. So the other collection of stories, the other collection of stories about being a doctor was actually Ting Chongko's stories. So Surgeons Do Not Cry, which is I've read that. I read that when I was a trainee. Our difference was that Ting Chongko was writing about period during 1970s, 1980s. But he came up with the book already towards the end of his practice. I guess that's our main difference. Ako, I released my book.
Also, he was not a blogger. I'm not a blogger.
Yeah, he was.
Makes a difference.
Yeah, so I guess that's the main difference. So medyo I have to say, that's a bit of it's a bit daring from my part and on my part to come up with a collection of patient stories when I'm just starting practice. So there's a risk involved in that as well. So I have to admit
Can I ask you about that risk, Ronnie? Because if you are a fictionist, then your characters are imagined and fictional. But if you're a writer of creative nonfiction, you draw your material from life, and you're supposed to be writing about factual things. Now, I wonder how easy it is in terms of ethics to write about other people. Do you feel you need to get their permission, for example, before you can actually publish something that draws from the life of someone else?
So most of them, I never write at the moment. So I never write about patient stories when they're happening. So you never really know when the stories happen. Again, first, foremost really is protecting the identities of patients.
Do you change their names?
All of the stories I may change the names, I may change some of the circumstances, but the essence of the story really remains the same. So there are, of course, instances when families would recognize themselves and they would message me and they would tell me, Doc, nabasa ko yung kwento mo sa akin. And actually, in general, they are actually very happy about the stories, even though it may have sometimes a sad ending or a happy ending. So, but again, if anybody would request me to take a story down, I would do it in a heartbeat. Yeah. So I would do it in a heartbeat. So again, the way I've always seen it is that that's why my tagline in my website is the stories will always be theirs. I'm just a storyteller. So yun lagi yung nasa footer ko sa website ko because I do not like to be seen as the protagonist in the story. I'm really just a storyteller here. No? So and what's more important.
But the narrator, the storyteller, is the one who determines how the story is gonna go. So actually, you are.
Kung sino yung bida, kung sino yung. Diba?
Yeah, but I understand.
The role.
I think what's clear is that you have to have the right kind of heart to do this. I mean, if you are mercenary and if you're not a kind person and you sort of poach the stories from other people's lives, then the ethical issue, the burden is the ethical problem is really great. But in your case, we know why you're doing this. You're actually trying to create an awareness in readers about the situation of so many of our patients. And
I think the important first step is really just to listen. The important first step is to listen. Listen to the people around you, and as I've said, it's really just trying to.
No, you can tell, Ronnie, that the heart in every story, in every piece you write, is to help.
I suppose that comes with being a doctor. Yeah. I've always told my students that the core of medicine will always be service. So we can do a lot of things. We can be leaders. We can be managers. We can be clinicians or researchers. We can be educators.
When we write, the persons we are helping are actually our readers also. Mm-hmm. So you have helped these people you have actually encountered in your practice as a doctor. But because you've decided to write these stories down and to write them in the way you do, you actually help more people because the readers are themselves transformed, because they get to understand beyond their own comfortable existence, beyond their own lives, what life is for other people, and how probably that's the beginning of change. That's the beginning of transformation, social transformation. I think, Ronnie, one of these days, really, we have to have a conversation with people who can make these changes happen more quickly. Because the change that we're actually doing through the humanities is the change of the imagination. I mean, it's slow, when in fact public policy can be faster. And maybe the thing to do is to actually have a big event where medical humanities products, texts, visuals, whatever else that the doctors have actually written and created can be brought to the attention of the public, and so that the public will understand that this is what the problem is from the perspective of the doctors themselves.
So again, the challenge really is to making it more accessible to people. Again, kasi nga people might have the perception na para hindi naman para sa akin yung yan, hindi naman para sa akin yung mga
That's gonna be really tough. I mean, right now we're in the midst of a pandemic, and they're still not listening to the doctors. Paano pa kaya yung mga iba, di ba?
Well, Ronnie, let's kind of end on a good note and ask you for advice you might have for a beginning writer. Because this is actually, I think, diba, the highest form of appreciation is creation. Many of our readers, the ones who really are moved by what we do, actually in the end, if they are truly moved and they are really transformed by the experience of art, they will want to produce art themselves.
So siguro if you're going to ask me, what's my advice to all those who want to write? Number one, read a lot. So it's very important to read a lot. You know what? Actually, I realized it's very challenging to write for the medical community. That's what I realized as well when I was writing my blogs. It's very challenging. You know what? Because these are already people who have to read a lot to begin with. So to begin with, these are people who have to read.
They're too clever by half.
Hmm?
They will not want to be sermonized, or they don't want to be preached at.
So again, so it's important. So if you want to write, so whether you're a medical student or not,
Can we ask you, who are your favorite authors? Because you say reading is essential.
Read a lot.
So,
You have to read a lot. Who do you read a lot of?
So if you sa foreign authors, I've always been influenced by Ernest Hemingway, Neil Gaiman, Haruki Murakami.
What about Oliver Sacks and all these writers writing about medicine?
Well,
Michael Crichton.
Of course, my other favorite book is When Breath Becomes Air. I think every medical student should read it. When Breath Becomes Air he's also a neurosurgeon. I think it's one of the best books ever written. So I like these authors because Hemingway kasi syempre very concise, very direct to the point sentences, not a lot, that doesn't waste any words. So Neil Gaiman's very imaginative. And then I feel like I'm living a Haruki Murakami novel. As the days go on, sa pandemic na to, I feel like I'm in a Haruki Murakami novel already. So, sa Filipino authors, Sir Butch Dalisay has always been my favorite writer. So I remember when I was a college student and I first got to buy his collection of short stories, and I read his winning pieces in the Palaka Award. So I said, I'd like to write like this. I like to write like this. Of course, what I realized though, I like specific stories as well. So there are specific stories na, gusto ko yun. More than sino nagsulat nun? Parang meron lang talaga mga story, gusto ko yan. So for example, my go-to story, you know what my go-to story is? Faith, Love, Time, and Dr. Lazaro.
Dr. Lazaro, Mariantes.
So I think that's again, that's another, kailangan mabasa mo yun. Hindi mo yung mabasa pag gusto mo.
What about Zita by Arturo Rotor?
By Arturo Rotor, Zita, it's a love story, di ba? So, dalawa naman lang kayo nabasa. Tagal ko din nag-isip, no? Tagal ko din mag-isip, no? So, but I have it took a long time before I got to read The Men Who Play God.
Yes.
It took a long time because it was difficult to find. It was so difficult to find. I had to let my sister borrow from the Ateneo Library just so I could read the stories. So Arturo Rotor's stories are nice kasi it allowed me to go back to the PGH of a long time ago. And you realize that the problems they had then are very much similar to the problems they have. Yeah, so
it's frustrating kasi parang things don't change, or they change, it's at a glacial pace.
So yun yung mga those writers have always been my influences. So again, my advice is if you're reading, especially now you have a lot of ebooks, ganyan. So my advice is if you like, look at the pieces. What do you like? What worked for you? What did you like best? What pieces you like best? If you don't understand the word, look it up. So that's how you learn words. So don't be ashamed to look it up. Don't assume that you know the word. Or ako, I have in my phone, I have a list of words I'd like to use someday. So parang nakita ko siya in a nice, galing ng pagkakasulat nito. So, so I would take a photo of that page, or I would take a screenshot, and wow, that's a nice way of saying that. And I wish I could do something similar. So, and then the other advice is just write. As I've said, writing. I realized for me that nothing is ever final when you write it down. So the hardest, just to give you an insight on how I write. When I write my essays, I never write in front of a computer. I really write by hand first. I get intimidated by the cursor and the Blackboard document. So I write everything by hand, and then siguro pag mga 50, 60, 70%, that's when I start typing on the computer. I realized that most of my difficulties with writing early on was that I was afraid that I would write that I would do something wrong with it. So na parang it's already imperfect, hindi ko pa nga siya nasusulat. I realized that essays, especially creative nonfiction, they evolve over time. So as you get older, you realize hindi na pala ganun yung views ko. And you are allowed to revise, you're allowed to change your essays, pieces you've written, depending on how you've grown. And it's sabi ko when I look back, when I go to my blog archives, when I read the blog posts I have from year 2000, 2001, 2002, and then I compare them, I see how the writing has evolved through the years. And I realized I really just had to start somewhere. So if for example, can you just imagine if I didn't blog before, if I wasn't blogging in 2001, would I have a book now? If I didn't try to find time writing fragments or scenes and scratch paper when I was a resident, would I have a book now? So if you go to my bedroom in my apartment, you find pieces of paper with my with scribbles, no? On and a lot of notebooks with paragraphs, and I just kept them. And then when you finally get the chance to reflect, then that's when you write. That's when you refine things. And you like talaga the most difficult part is starting. The most difficult part is starting. And finally, the last piece of advice I have. What worked for me really when editing, so when revising, I really like this advice by Neil Gaiman. I just saw it on the internet. He says, do not edit for grammar, edit for clarity. So more people kasi sometimes are obsessed about about grammar, when really it's about making things clear. It's more than grammar. No? I suppose it's more than grammar, it's clarity. So how I do it now, I just write and write and write and write and write. And then towards the end, and then I revise. And when I revise, that's always my question. Is it clear? Is this paragraph clear? Is this what I want to say? Is this the message that I want to get across? So,
yeah. That's similar to the advice I got when I was younger. It's to write in white heat and to revise in cold blood.
Sorry,
You write in white heat, and then you revise in cold blood.
Yes.
Meaning, kill your darlings. When it's time to revise, don't be attached to words. Get rid of them if they don't add to the clarity of the work.
To be honest, I should be writing more now, but it's a difficult time. I have to say, it's a difficult.
I think what's good about your advice is that you're actually telling the young person now, affirmation is essential. You need to sort of get more or less affirmed, and you need to feel good about writing so that you will keep writing. And because now it's a digital age, you can actually, in a way, publish ahead before it becomes a book. You publish on a website, you publish on Facebook. In other words, you get the feedback immediately. And that affirmation can be given to you right away. So it's good to actually have that young person in mind when we give this.
Actually, yung pangarap ko lang makita yung pangalan ko sa isang bookshelf. To see my book with my name on it on a bookshelf. So yun
Yeah,
lang.
before that, you saw your name on WordPress, right? So and you had people making comments and you had followers. So in
Well,
a
of
way,
course, yeah, you have to take these things with a grain of salt kasi parang lang yung nagsabi na, uy, ang pogi-pogi mo ngayon. So, of course, the Facebook likes and the retweets are nice, but
can you imagine how far we have come? Emily Dickinson only was published 4 times in her lifetime. And when she died, they discovered she had written 2,700 poems.
Under her bed, right?
Yes. No, she never had people read her. She was not really read when she was alive. So now we can be read ahead because we have the internet, we have social media and things like that. So take advantage of
my
that.
only fear is that because you know how people now are very fond of posting Twitter threads or Facebook posts become viral. I just hope people are making an effort to actually collect these things and to make them grow into something bigger.
At the beginning of it, some more traditional teachers in UP are looking down on Instagram poetry and Twitter poetry and things like that. I think that it's good. I mean, encourage that because it can be the beginning of a real commitment to become a writer. So, but of course, you don't begin there and end there. Hopefully, you will graduate from Instagram.
I hope that they collect these things and actually sit down and write a nice CNF piece one day with these Twitter threads.
We already published.
Hinaanan ko lahat from blog to website.
Ron, we have a novel that's made up of tweets published by UP Press.
Which one?
Roland.
Roland Tolentino. Yeah, puro tweets lang yon, pero novel siya.
Sawi Wagi.
Sawi Wagi or something, yeah. All right. So we have no more time. We said we were going to end in 30 minutes, and now it turns out it's more than
an hour.
It's almost an hour. We had such a wonderful conversation with Ronnie, our author. So we would like now to maybe give Ronnie the opportunity to say his last few words before we sign off.
Yeah, why should they buy your book?
All right, so
needless to say, this is all about selling his book. Selling the author.
The University of the Philippines Press. Support Aklatan 2020. So this is my book. Some days you can save them all. The artwork is by Vin Kilop, my very talented friend. You can find him on Instagram, Vin Kilop. So that it's a collection of essays from medical school to residency and beyond. Who is this book for? Anyone. So anyone.
Anyone who likes to read good literature, anyone who is a fan of creative nonfiction as a genre, anyone who's interested in doctors producing works of art.
And stories with a heart, basically.
Yes.
So the only requirement for you is you just have to have the heart to listen to the people in these stories. So again, I hope everyone keeps safe. These are very challenging times. These are very difficult times for all of us. We still can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But again, the most important thing is that we really just have to realize that every life deserves to be saved. So every life deserves to be saved at this stage. So we cannot, hindi po pwedeng ganun naman talaga, kasalanan nila yan. No, that's how we lose this fight. That is how we lose this fight. Everyone needs to realize that everyone is important. And we have to give it our best shot. We owe it to everyone to give it our best shot. That's the only way we can get out of this. That's it.
All right.
So I'm on Twitter. So I'm on Twitter. You can follow me at Ronnie Bats, RONIBATS. So I really enjoy having conversations with people on Twitter. I don't block people. So,
I'd like to congratulate Ronnie, our author. He is actually one of our bestsellers at the UP Press right now. And he's a wonderful person. And we wish him more success. And when you see success after success happening to someone, and it's Ronnie, it's someone like Ronnie, you feel very good about it because he deserves every bit of it. So keep safe and well, everyone. And we have more authors to be interviewed for Aklatan. And so signing off. All right. Bye-bye.
Recording now. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Ending. Bye-bye.